Believe it or not, the Cowboys are underdogs versus the Carolina Panthers, who had not been favorites in over 2 years. We'll get into whether or not the Cowboys will win. Let's get to it. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. Some problems with the intro video roll. Sorry about that. But anyways, we are here ready to talk some Cowboys football. And I opened with that stat because I was very surprised at it. The Panthers have not been favorites in 2 years, and now they are against the Cowboys. And what does that really tell you about where the Cowboys are at and where the Panthers are at? Because I know they're a 3-win team going into week 15. And if you're a Cowboys fan that maybe hasn't kept up with the rest of the league, you might be thinking, well, the Cowboys should win this one, shouldn't they? But then you look at what the Panthers have done recently, and it's actually pretty impressive. They won 2 straight, and then they lost versus some NFL juggernauts, including the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, in very close games. So this Carolina Panthers team is not looking like the same old, same old. And more importantly than that, perhaps, is the fact that one of the biggest reasons why they're playing so well is Bryce Young, the same dude they benched earlier in the year for not being good at all. I'm not talking about struggling a little bit. He was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL going back to 2000 among every NFL quarterback. It was bad for Bryce Young out there in Carolina. They bench him for Andy Dalton. He comes back, and all of a sudden, it looks like he is another player. He looks closer to the Alabama Bryce Young than he ever has at the NFL level. And we're going to talk about some reasons why tonight, and we're going to talk about what it will take for the Cowboys to stop him and the Cowboys in general to beat the Panthers on Sunday. But first, let me say hi in the chat. Who do we've got around here? We've got Katharina, as always. We've got Daniel, Gregory. We've got Toxic Tom in here. Have not seen you in a while, Toxic. Happy to have you here on the show. And Toxic says, I feel so bad for Jonathan Brooks. Dude cannot catch a break. And Jonathan Brooks, you know his story, right? Injured back coming out of the Texas Longhorns. For a long time, we thought he would be a Dallas Cowboy. Has suffered with some nasty injuries. And then last week, goes down injured. And I don't know if you guys have seen the play, but not only is it non-contact, it looked to me like he hasn't even, like he wasn't even cutting, you know? So it wasn't a non-contact injury to me where he's trying to make a sharp cut to catch the defense off guard or anything like that. It's just like an unlucky step, honestly, for Jonathan Brooks. And he even like limps a little bit before going down. And it was so tough to watch, man. I agree with you, Toxic. Shout out to Isidro, who is joining us as well. Welcome everyone into the show. Let's talk a little bit about this game. So I set out to kind of figure out what the heck was going on with the Panthers. Why are they good suddenly? Basically, was my question. And there's a lot to talk on the Cowboys side of things, but let's get familiar with what's going on with the Panthers. And honestly, it's not that hard. The quarterback's playing some good football. There are a lot of those plays where Bryce Young's just buying time in the pocket and scrambling around and finding ways to get the ball out to receivers by extending plays. That is what Bryce Young is doing. It is what he did over in Alabama, and it is what he's been doing in Carolina as well. You could argue the Panthers win the game if Xavier Legette just catches the football versus the Eagles last week. They should have beaten the Eagles, plain and simple. Bryce Young is also being a little bit of a danger with his own legs as well. I think he's got like 96 yards over the last 4 games. He's a scrambler to watch out for, especially because you cannot really be very aggressive when Bryce Young sets out to run because he will punish you if you over pursue him. He will stop and throw the football when the defenders commit downfield to try to get him. So he's playing good ball, as simple as that. But it's not only that, right? They've got a strong running game with Chuba Hubbard, right? and people are talking about him in the chat even. Toxic says Chuba Chuba Choo Choo is one of the most underrated players in 2024. The guy is at the 1,000 yard mark, and it's week 15, and that is Chava Hubbard. He's playing some good football. Kelvin also mentioned it. Kevin, excuse me. He says Carolina baby back ribs are good, just not their defense, and that is true, man. And I talk about the quarterback, but they also have a strong running back. Here's what I wasn't really expecting, though, because I went into this week, preparing for the game, and I was like, well, sure, Bryce Young can do some things here and there. But there's no way they're going to be able to slow down Micah Parsons and company, because I think back to that 2023 matchup, and I remember Panthers' offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL. They stand no chance against Micah. Well, they might. They're playing good football as well up front. This is the Panthers team that honestly kind of handled the Eagles, including Jalen Carter, last weekend. I think that offensive line is not going to be particularly scared of the Cowboys. They're going to have a plan to deal with Micah, but this is not a big mismatch that we're talking about going into Sunday. They're keeping the pocket clean for Bryce Young, and that's one of the biggest surprises to me. And I talked about Chuba Hubbard, right, who is Kevin's money pickup on the waivers for his fantasy football team. They're winning. They're winning games. I mean, they're not winning games, but they won some games, and they went on a very close losing streak versus the Chiefs and the Eagles, and they're doing so in a very legit way. You got to respect it, I guess. And this is not the Panthers team that you might think it is. Now, going forward a little bit here and getting into some of the matchups that I think are going to be very important, Adam Thielen is also balling out. Xavier Legette is inconsistent, but he's playing well. Brooks, number 83. Not Brooks. Wait. I immediately translated that into Cowboys language, and I said 83 Jalen Brooks. What is the number of 83? One of their top receivers right now. David Moore, especially with Jalen Coker dealing with some injuries, he's been stepping up for them. David Moore, there are some plays. So here's what the Panthers like to do. They like to run the ball. They like to be physical. They like to run into these 12 package groups and do all that. And then they will do a lot of shot plays. That's what they did against the Eagles even. Like, they will get into first and second down and long, and they are not afraid to go into play action and really get those 7-man protection schemes with 2 receivers downfield. And he's had some moments, 83 has. So he's someone to worry about. But mostly, I think it's Adam Thielen. I think it's the tight ends a little bit. So when I look at this game, one of the players that I really want to show up is Jordan Lewis. Now, I'm a little bit worried because Jordan Lewis did have that injury that kind of made him work with the courts today, right? And I don't know exactly what the expectation is for Mr. Jordan Lewis going into Sunday, but you need Jordan to play versus the Panthers, because otherwise Adam Thielen is gonna take advantage of you. But that's what we know so far, right? Jordan Lewis went through the courts during the open portion of practice. Hopefully he's ready to go by Sunday. But I know Jordan Lewis is the kind of injury that would make me change my prediction if I picked the Cowboys, right? If I was picking the Cowboys to win and then Jordan Lewis was inactive on Sunday, that's the kind of injury that I would totally flip my prediction on, because Adam Thielen is hurting defenses. There's one play that really stood out to me where it's like, okay, the Panthers just have answers. The scheme is much better with Dave Canales. I don't think he was doing anything special early in the year, and it didn't seem like players were buying into it even. But there are some plays now where he will get Adam Thielen in trips formations, in the slot, and then he'll use the outside receiver to basically run a clear route and send kind of like Adam Thielen on a out route before he turns into a wheel route, which are plays that are basically designed for Adam Thielen to shine. And you see some of that on tape for the Panthers, but you will also see some plays where it's just like, okay, we're getting on third and long, a little bit of a third and 12 situation versus the Eagles. They will go on empty to deal with the blitz. They will place, again, like some sort of a trips formation, but where the number 2 and the number 3 from the outside in are a little bit closer together, and then they'll run the stem of the route right next to each other to generate separation for Adam Thielen, and then he picks up the first down after the catch. You see some of that kind of like spice in the Panthers offense, and I kind of like that. I'm looking at this offense and I'm like, okay, this is legit. So Jordan Lewis will need to step up, in my opinion, versus Thielen. You will be challenged by the Panthers running game. And I know we talked so much about the Marvin Overshown, but this is the kind of game where, man, I would love to have Overshown ready for this game. And it sucks that the Cowboys won't be able to have him. So it's going to be a big day tackling wise for Maurice Leofau, Eric Kendricks, and shout out Damon Clark. I'm wondering what will happen with Clark as well. The guy started 17 games last year. He's been relegated firmly to the bench. He's been inactive multiple games this season. He's played like 21 snaps on defense since the bye week, and 20 of those came in the blowout loss to the Eagles. So pretty rough go this season for the Damon Clark. I wonder if with Marvin Overshown out, maybe he kind of gets a chance to be a rotational player on defense. And if so, does he get a shot at redemption? Because it seems to me like Mike Zimmer just did not like Clark, because it's pretty wild that he went from being a 17 loss, a 17 starts player in 2023 to just you're on the bench and you're not a part of the defense, essentially. That's been surprising to me. But the tackling is going to have to be on point. Jordan Lewis in coverage is going to have to be on point. And, I mean, at the end of the day, we've talked a lot about this pass rush being much better with Micah Parsons back in the lineup. That is going to have to show up on Sunday versus this Panthers offensive line. There's one thing I do believe when watching that Eagles game and when watching that film that kind of makes me think the Cowboys might be successful versus the Panthers offensive line. And that is that the Panthers have a strong O-line that handle the interior defenders from the Eagles, who are much better than the Cowboys. You know, Jalen Carter and company, they're much better than Oza, Mazi Smith. And I like Oza a whole lot, obviously, but just as a unit, as an overall unit, I think the Eagles are better at defensive tackle. I don't think the Eagles have the edges, though, that the Cowboys have. And mostly because of Micah, right? Micah is so good that, to me, I would rank him firmly above the Eagles, defensive end wise, because they've got Josh Sweat, right? They've got Nolan Smith. But I think that's going to be something that the Panthers didn't have to deal with last weekend that they will have to deal with versus the Cowboys. Just the mere speed of Micah being a menace every single snap out there on the field. And I think Micah can beat the tackles, right? I think he can beat both the Panthers left tackle and the right tackle, even though Ekwonu, which is the left tackle, has been unbelievably better this season. I would challenge Taylor Moton, honestly, over on the right side. And one of the things that you want from this game is to try to confuse Bryce Young. I mean, he did face Big Fangio and came out mostly unbothered. And Big Fangio is famous for his disguised coverages. But I wonder if some double A gap stuff in this game is the way to go as well, with like just try to challenge this still young and growing offensive line into communicating, and just get it right every single time. And maybe the Cowboys find something there. That's also another area where you're going to miss Overshown a whole lot, where the double A gap blitzes really were hitting their stride because of what Overshown could do as well. And now you don't have that X factor whenever you're trying to cook up these pressure schemes to get to the quarterback. But I think that's also going to be a huge part of this game. Isidro says, I think Simmer is coming back. McCarthy can get his knacks elsewhere. And I still don't know what to make out of the coaching staff, man. I don't know. Like, I think if you move on from McCarthy, the healthy thing to do would be to also move on from the defensive coordinator and let the head coach that is coming through the door build his own staff. But I also know maybe the Cowboys do want to keep Simmer around, especially because the last time they kind of really allowed the head coach to pick his defensive coordinator, Mike Nolan came through that door. So maybe the Cowboys are like, hell no, we're picking the coordinators this time. So we'll see, man. Kevin says, we lost agent Overshown. Pressure. So it will be a field day for Chuba. And man, you're going to miss Overshown in that matchup. I agree. Long story short, I do think the Panthers move the ball. I do think the Panthers put some points on the board. I don't think the Cowboys defense will overwhelm the Panthers in any shape, way, or form. But I do think Micah is going to get some game-wrecking plays. On the other side of the ball, though, I just don't know what to make of it, man. The Cowboys, man, they faced one of the worst defenses in the NFL last Monday. They faced a defense that cannot cover, that cannot tackle, that you can throw the football their way, they won't pick it off because they're bad. The Bengals are terribly awful. You go up against the Panthers, they're better, I guess, but they're also one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, statistically speaking. So I kind of view this game on two key ways. I see two pillars when we're talking about the Cowboys offense versus the Panthers defense. One of them is, I think you're going to be able to run with the guy that is fresh off of a 131-yard performance in which he averaged 7 yards every time he ran the ball. Rico Dowdle should be able to run against this defense. Should be able to do so. I don't think the Panthers have that game-wrecking defensive tackle or linebacker, even though they've got some dudes, even though the Cowboys, have been inconsistent in offense just overall. I think even if you have Brock Hoffman at center, which you're going to have, I don't think Cooper Beebe is going to be ready for game day. Mike McCarthy also described it as a long shot earlier in the week. I mean, it's a concussion. Concussion protocol is really tight, and coming back from a Monday game to play on a Sunday at noon, it's just going to be tough, honestly. So you're going to have Brock Hoffman, TJ Voss. Those dudes have generated movement. It's not your ideal lineup. You're down a couple starters, but I think they can still establish the run with Rico Dowdle. On the other hand, I don't know how you trust Cooper Rush. I don't know if there is a single defense in the NFL that could make me believe that Cooper Rush is going to have a great day. I cannot get on that boat against any of the other 31 defenses in the NFL. I really cannot. And I understand that the Cowboys, we could make the argument, well, then just run the damn ball. But then the Cowboys ask Cooper Rush to throw the football in crunch time a whole lot. And I know people have talked about this, and I can even see a comment right now. Toxic says, you had a running back averaging 7 yards a clip, and you ask your backup quarterback to drop back and throw over 30 times. Basura. It really is basura. It really is trash. And sometimes those are the kind of things with this Cowboys team where you're like, well, if they do this, if they run the ball with Rico and they really lean into it, it could work out. But it's tough to trust the coaching staff to really take that approach. It's also tough to expect them to, in the sense of, well, if you're not handing the ball off to Rico Dowdle 30 times, who's getting the other 10 carries, right? Say that you're going to limit Rico to 20 because you think he's not an every down back, and you think things will go south health wise if you ask him to carry the ball 30 times. Well, it would be nice to trust whoever else is getting the football if it's not Rico, which I think is one of the things that these Cowboys team is dealing with. That every time they get sick in there, it's like, well, I could run it, I guess, but chances are I'm not getting a whole lot. I kind of get pissed every once and then because I'm like, what about Lipke? Like, do you remember when we were talking about Lipke being this tight end slash fullback slash running back? They have not used him anymore. Like, they have not even used him as a pass catching fullback. So here is the Cowboys kind of logic, it seems. And it's funny to me, man, sometimes. When the Cowboys were dealing with tight end drama, and that happened in the form of Jake Ferguson being banked up. It also happened in the form of backup tight ends being banged up, and they needed some help. And the logic was, oh, we trust Mr. Hunter Lipke to be a factor at tight end. And they even pitched it to us a little bit. They were like, oh, he can run, he can catch, he can block. This guy can do it all. So much so that we're going to play him at tight end. We're not going to ask him to catch footballs out of the backfield like he's a loser. He's going to line up at tight end, and he's going to go get the football. The guy has 41 receiving yards versus the Ravens in week 3. Then he gets a performance where he gets 2 catches for 14 yards. Nothing super sexy, but still productive, right? And then he gets another catch for 18 yards the week after that. Since then, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games, Hunter Lipke has 4 catches for 9 yards. The Cowboys went from saying Hunter Lipke can be a legitimate tight end if we ask him to we're not going to throw the football to him as a fullback out of the backfield. We're going to completely forget about him. And I don't get that, honestly. I think that is silly. I understand if they don't want to treat him as a usual running back, but at least get him involved some way, somehow. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why they're doing things the way that they are, but I know every time number 15 goes into that field, I'm like, man, we're not going to get anything out of this play if we run it. I wish the Cowboys would treat Hunter Lipke as their second best back on the team, because he might be their second best back on the team, all things considered. But we'll see, man. Toxic says, Mo, I genuinely do not trust Fat Garrett. And I'm assuming this is what we're calling Mike McCarthy now. And he's feel for the game in real time. The game has passed him by because today's NFL is adaptive game to game. And I'm not against it. I'm not against that comment at all. I think one of the biggest reasons, here's the thing. I think one of the biggest reasons why you keep McCarthy, if you're making the argument for McCarthy, it is the fact that players do fight for him. Players do seem to love what he's built. And there is a level of culture that you had not had before McCarthy. 12 win seasons, 3 in a row. I know people get sick and tired of hearing this, but the fact is you didn't have that since the Super Bowl era for the Cowboys, right? You have to go back to the dynasty to even think about back-to-back playoff years with Jason Garrett. You never heard of that, right? So that counts for something. But the biggest argument against Mike McCarthy is absolutely that, what Toxic you said. It's absolutely the fact that you're not really bringing any game day advantage to the table. You don't manage the clock well. Your challenges suck even. And the scheme, it was elite in 2023 for a run of games that yielded all-pro seasons for CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. But other than that, the scheme has not really brought a lot to life in Dallas. And I do think that Mike McCarthy got a little bit, they did him a little bit wrong this season. the team that the way that the front office approached things this year is ridiculous. And two things can be true at the same time. Mike McCarthy was set up a little bit for failure in 2024, but he also could do more. I absolutely think you could do more. Hey, shout out to Katharina. How about them Cowboys? Shout out to Katharina. Thank you for the super chat. She says, Merry Christmas, Mo. Gives us the orange super chat. And I'll just hit you with another how about them Cowboys. That's awesome. Thank you. Hey. Yeah, here we go. Shout out to you. Thank you for everything you do, Mo. Oh, Katharina, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the show every single day. I really appreciate it. Look at Melville says, imagine keeping this guy after seeing he won't run the ball. And that goes directly with, you remember Joe Brady when he was with the Bills? Well, he's still with the Bills, but last season, what happened in Buffalo was they had Ken Dorsey, fired him, promoted Joe Brady, and he was their play caller for the late portion of the season. That's when the Cowboys played Buffalo, in Buffalo, and James Cook completely destroyed us by running the ball so many times because the Cowboys couldn't stop it. Joe Brady had a quote after that game where he was like, one thing is to call plays, and another very different thing is to call the game. And what Joe Brady meant was, hell no, it wasn't our plan to go into this matchup and run the ball as much as we did. We had a lot of pass plays ready to go. We were going to do so much stuff to this Cowboys defense. We were going to throw a lot of things their way. But they couldn't stop James Cook. So why would we stop running the ball? And that mindset about calling the play versus calling the game is probably what cost you the game in Monday night versus the Bengals. Because if the Cowboys had kept on running and running and running, I don't think the Bengals would have stopped them. Rico Dowdle was running like a madman on that game, and they couldn't tackle him. 87 yards after contact, I believe, Rico had. Or 84, something like that, out of 131. But for some reason, the Cowboys were like, Coop, before this season, you were 5-1 as a starter for us. So we're going to put the game on you. Which is just funny to think about, man. Do what works, FFS. It's not that hard, says Toxic Tom. And yeah, man, I agree. I wish the Cowboys would think the same way that we do. You see that it says Ray Charles could see that, Mo. Damn. Okay. Now going into week 15, do you expect to see Trey Lance? I don't really expect to see Trey Lance. But let me ask you something. Should the Cowboys play Trey Lance in week 15? This was a weekly question not that long ago. But now we've kind of moved on a little bit from it. But I think that Monday night loss with the way Cooper Rush played, that sparked up the conversation. So let me know, what do you think? Should the Cowboys play Trey Lance a little bit more or not? And while you give me your answers, though, let me talk to you about our friends over at Texas Card House. I don't know if they would bet on Trey Lance, but I know I'm betting on them as the best place to play poker at, because this is where you can meet the thrill of the game with the excitement of the community. And it goes for any poker aficionado. If you're a seasoned pro, if you are just starting out, make sure you check out Texas Card House in any of their 6 Texas locations, because trust me, here you will get the perfect blend of luxury, sophistication, and camaraderie that any poker aficionado is looking for. And if you mention A to Z Sports, you will get a free month of membership and 2 free hours to play poker. That is valid at the Las Colinas venues and the Dallas venues. So make sure you check them out. Mention A to Z Sports, sign up as a new member, and get a free month of membership over at Texas Card House. If you like playing poker, this is a place to do it at. Let's see what you guys have to say, though. Isidro says, yes, I would play Trey Lance. Katharina says, might as well. We have nothing to lose anymore, Mo. Toxic Tom says, at this point, why not? And honestly, I'm mostly at this point as well. I'm like, hell yeah, I want to see Trey Lance. So here's a couple of different ways to look at it. As fans, I think we're all on the same page. We want to see him because we're even curious about what this dude looks like. We also gotta admit the Cowboys kind of get nothing out of playing him because there's no incentive to play him in the sense of let's find out what this guy has. That doesn't exist anymore with Trey Lance for several reasons. One, we kind of have a very good idea of what Trey Lance is at this stage of his career, right? Saw it at San Francisco, saw it here in Dallas as well this preseason. It's not great. He's going to risk the football a whole lot. He's going to make mistakes. There's all of that. You also do not control his future. So you don't really benefit from giving him the snaps. If this was 2023 and the Cowboys would still have him under contract for 2024, well, yeah, you find out what you've got in him. You go from only preseason snaps to getting him in real games and actual football games that matter. At the same time, there's a level of balance, I would assume, in what you're doing as a coaching staff for the teammates that they've got, right? So what I mean by that is if Trey Lance really, really has shown you nothing in practice that is different from what you already saw in the preseason, then I legitimately believe the Cowboys shouldn't play him. But that's assuming something that we don't know, because we don't know what Trey Lance has looked in practice during the regular season. But if the Cowboys see anything that they can be, well, let's bet on this, I would be all for it. I really would. But I also understand that if he's just bad, then you don't do it because there's a level of respect in the locker room, I guess, that you got to take care of. Like if players know from what they see in practice that one dude is better than the other, you don't play the worst one just because he can run the ball and he's more exciting. So I think there's that to consider, which makes the conversation very, very complicated. But let's see what you guys have to say. Isidro says, I bet Mo Beast at the card table. I'm not going to lie. Man, how can I show you this picture so you believe me? It's tricky because I have it on video on my phone. If you follow me on Twitter, I might have posted this picture. I learned how to play poker when I was 9 years old because my dad taught me how to play poker. And I played with grown-ups. And I'm talking about, and YouTube, this is only for entertainment purposes. Do not take this very literal. Wink, wink. I played underground poker games as a 10, 11-year-old. And I won some of those tournaments. I've always loved poker so much. So, yeah, there's that. There's that. Toxic says, Mo, let's be real. He only made the roster because of politics. He was awful even in the preseason. And that is the thing. I think that is the biggest thing that we cannot escape from. Trey Lance might be really, really bad, and the upside might just not be there. So if that's the case, and you just play him just because, I don't think that goes very well with coaches and teammates. And I know, as fans, it's easy to be, oh man, the season doesn't matter anyways. But tell that to the players, and they won't see it the same way. CeeDee Lamb just talked about this, where he's like, what do you mean finding motivation? We still got to find a way to win games. We still got to win the game. That's what CeeDee told reporters today. And I think that's a good way to put it. Like, they're football players. They want to win games. They're not even thinking about tanking. They're not thinking about the only reason why a football player in a season that doesn't matter anymore would want to stop playing games is if he's hurt or if he's got a huge contract negotiation coming up, I guess. But there's that. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got the Cowboys winning on Sunday. I don't know, call it a hunch, but I do think the Cowboys defense front is going to give Bryce Young some fits. I also think they're far from a perfect team. I know they have kept it close versus the Eagles and the Chiefs, but I think many of the reasons why they're losing games is because they're not good enough yet, and they're missing opportunities in the red zone. They're missing opportunities on third down. They're missing some big play opportunities like the drop which Xavier Legette last week. And I think that will be the case regardless of who they're facing, not only against top competition. I could totally see the Panthers winning the game, but I'm going to take the Cowboys. I'm going to take the Cowboys because of Micah Parsons. 90% of my pick has to do with Micah Parsons. The guy had 10 pressures versus the Bengals last week. I think this guy is still going to play at a 200% level, even if the playoff hopes are dead now. But I've got the Cowboys. I'm going to say, man, what am I going to say? I'm going to say 20. I'm going to say 21. I hate saying 21 because that means 3 touchdowns, right? And I don't trust the Cowboys to do that. I'm going to say a weird score. I'm going to say 22-18. That's going to be my pick for Sunday, Cowboys versus Panthers. 22-18. I'm going to go with a weird score. Toxic says 23-17 Dallas. Not confident at all with that. 24-21 Cowboys, says Katharina. You see that it's a 17-14 Cowboys. Gregory hits us with a 26-23 Cowboys. So it seems like there is some hope from Cowboys Nation that they'll get it done on Sunday. Ladies and gentlemen, that will be it for me tonight here on the show. Appreciate you joining A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. Appreciate you supporting the show. Even when things are this stark and dark in the Dallas world, Anton says 27-23 damn boys. There you go. Goat Lord. That's an awesome YouTube username. I'll see you on Sunday night to discuss whatever happens in this game. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.